My name is Scarlett. I was 18 when my parents handed me a wrinkled $20 bill and said, "Your sister deserves the future, not you." No whisper, no hesitation, just a verdict in the rain. I remember every detail of that night. The way the rain felt like tiny needles against my skin. The way my father's eyes couldn't even meet mine when he pressed that bill into my shaking hand. $20. That's what they decided I was worth. $20 and a lifetime of wondering what I did wrong. My mother stood behind him, arms crossed, her face carved from stone. I searched for something in her expression. Regret, guilt, maybe even a flicker of doubt. But there was nothing. Nothing but cold finality. Your sister deserves the future, not you. Those 7 words. 7 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about family, about love, about belonging. They didn't yell them. They didn't scream. That might have been easier somehow. Anger I could have understood. But this was worse. This was calculated. Deliberate. This was a choice they'd already made, probably weeks or months before, sitting at the kitchen table over coffee while I was upstairs believing I had a home. Their voices were cold, but the silence after that door shut? That's what broke me. That was the night I realized I didn't have a home anymore. I stood there on that porch, suitcase at my feet, rain soaking through my jacket, and I waited. God, I waited. I waited for the door to open again. I waited for my mother to come rushing out, tears in her eyes, saying it was all a mistake, a cruel joke, a test I'd somehow passed. I waited for my father to tell me to come back inside, that they'd figure something out, that families don't just throw away their children like garbage. But that door stayed closed. The porch light flickered above me. Once, twice, 3 times, like even the house was rejecting me. And in that moment, standing there in the dark and the rain, I felt something inside me crack open. Not break, exactly. Crack. Like when ice starts to fracture before it shatters completely. Every birthday they'd celebrated, every school play they'd attended, every time they'd said, "I love you," all of it became a lie in that single moment. How long had they been planning this? How many dinners had we shared where they looked at me and saw what? A burden? A mistake? Second place? My sister, Emily. Perfect Emily with her perfect grades and her perfect smile. Emily who never questioned anything, who always did what they asked, who fit into their idea of success like she was custom-made for it. And maybe she was. Maybe I was just the rough draft they wished they could erase. They chose her. They chose her future over mine, her dreams over mine, her life over mine. And they didn't even have the decency to pretend it was difficult. I picked up my suitcase, everything I owned crammed into one bag, and I walked down those porch steps. Each step felt like walking away from my own grave. Behind me, I heard the lock click. They locked the door. They actually locked it like I might try to come back. Like I was some kind of threat to their perfect little family portrait with Emily at the center, and me cropped out completely. That was the night everything changed. That was the night Scarlett, the daughter, the sister, the girl who believed in family, died on that porch. And something else was born. Something harder. Something that had to be. Before I tell you how the circle closed, like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from, because I know I'm not the only one who's ever been told they didn't deserve a future. I worked double shifts and studied at night. I washed dishes in cafes that couldn't afford heating. Some nights I got sick, some nights I didn't eat. But every night, I promised myself, if life ever gave me a second chance, I'd never waste it. That first week, I slept on park benches. Do you know what it's like to try to sleep when every sound makes you think someone's coming to hurt you? When the cold seeps so deep into your bones that you can't remember what warm feels like. I'd curl up with my jacket pulled over my head, my suitcase clutched against my chest like a shield, and I'd count the hours until sunrise. Dawn meant safety. Dawn meant I could move again, pretend to be normal, pretend I wasn't homeless at 18 years old. I found a diner that would hire me without asking too many questions. Jerry's Place. It smelled like grease and desperation, and the owner, Jerry, a man with kind eyes and rough hands, looked at me that first morning and said, "You running from something or toward something?" I told him I didn't know yet. He gave me the job anyway. $5 an hour under the table, closing shifts 6 days a week. My hands blistered from scrubbing pots. My feet ached so badly I'd cry in the bathroom stall between orders. But I showed up. Every single day I showed up. At night, when the diner closed, I'd go to the 24-hour library 3 blocks away. That library became my sanctuary. The librarian, Mrs. Chun, never asked why I was there until 3 in the morning, why I always had the same worn textbooks, why I sometimes fell asleep at the tables. She'd just gently wake me before her shift ended and make sure I took my things. I studied business administration, finance, management, anything that might give me a path out of this nightmare. My eyes burned from the fluorescent lights. My back screamed from hunching over those books. But I read. God, did I read? I absorbed every word like my life depended on it. Because it did. Some nights I got sick. Really sick. There was a week in winter where I had a fever so high I couldn't see straight, but I still went to work because missing a shift meant not eating. I threw up in the alley behind the diner and went right back to washing dishes. My hands shook so badly I broke 3 plates. Jerry didn't fire me. He made me soup instead and told me to sit down for 10 minutes. I cried into that soup. I cried because kindness, real kindness, had become so foreign to me that I didn't know how to accept it anymore. Some nights I didn't eat. I'd stare at the vending machine at the library, counting the coins in my pocket, doing the math. If I buy this candy bar now, can I afford the bus tomorrow? If I skip dinner tonight, can I buy that textbook I need? Food became a calculation, not a comfort. My body got thinner. My cheeks hollowed out. I started wearing layers not just because I was cold, but because I didn't want people to see how much weight I'd lost. Hunger has a sound, you know. It's not just your stomach growling. It's this constant, gnawing ache that follows you everywhere, that makes you irritable and exhausted and desperate. But every night, I promise myself, if life ever gave me a second chance, I'd never waste it. I'd lie in whatever corner I'd found to sleep in that night, sometimes a youth shelter, sometimes a church basement, once even an abandoned building, and I'd repeat it like a mantra. This isn't forever. This isn't who you are. This is just the chapter before everything changes. I didn't believe it at first. For months, I didn't believe it. But I kept saying it anyway because the alternative was giving up. And giving up meant they were right. It meant I really didn't deserve a future. I started taking online courses through the library computers. Free ones at first, then ones I scraped together money for, dollar by dollar. I learned accounting. I learned management theory. I learned how to interview, how to network, how to make myself indispensable. Every skill I gained felt like armor. Every certificate I earned felt like proof that I was more than what they'd made me feel. I wasn't the worthless daughter they'd thrown away. I was building something. Slowly, painfully, impossibly, I was building something. There were moments I wanted to quit. Moments I stood on bridges and thought about how easy it would be to just stop. To stop fighting, stop hurting, stop carrying this weight. But something kept me moving. Maybe it was spite. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just too much stubbornness to let them win. Whatever it was, it pushed me forward when I had nothing left to give. It whispered, "One more day. Just survive one more day." And somehow I did. Day after miserable day, I survived. I survived because I had to. Because no one was coming to save me. Because my second chance wasn't going to be handed to me on a silver platter like Emily's life had been. I had to claw it out of the dirt with my bare hands. And so I did. I didn't get a miracle. I got tired. And I turned that tired into discipline. I studied. I built. I climbed. Until one morning I realized the same girl they threw away had built her own future from scratch. 5 years. It took 5 years of relentless, soul-crushing work. 5 years of sleeping 4 hours a night. 5 years of choosing textbooks over meals, of choosing progress over comfort, of choosing ambition over the luxury of breaking down. I finished my degree online while working full-time. Then I got an entry-level position at a tech startup. Then I worked my way up, junior associate, project coordinator, team lead, manager. Each promotion felt like another piece of myself I was reclaiming. Each raise felt like proof that I was worth more than $20. I learned to interview like my life depended on it because, for the longest time, it did. I learned to negotiate, to demand what I deserved, to walk into rooms full of people who had everything handed to them and prove I belonged there too. More than belonged, that I'd earned it. Every presentation I gave, every project I completed, every team I led, it was all evidence. Evidence that they were wrong. Evidence that I was capable of extraordinary things when given even the smallest chance. I stopped being afraid. That's what really changed. I stopped fearing rejection because I'd already survived the worst rejection possible. What's a job saying no compared to your own parents closing the door on you? What's a failed interview compared to sleeping on park benches? Nothing. It was all nothing. And that fearlessness became my greatest weapon. I could take risks other people couldn't because I'd already lost everything once. I had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I saved money. God, I saved every penny like it was sacred. I remembered what it felt like to have nothing, and I swore I'd never feel that way again. I built an emergency fund, then savings, then investments. I educated myself on finance, on wealth building, on security. Money wasn't just money anymore. It was freedom. It was never having to depend on anyone ever again. It was the difference between being thrown away and being untouchable. And then one day, I woke up and realized I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't the 18-year-old shivering on a porch with a suitcase and shattered dreams. I was 23, and I was powerful. Not in the way they measure power, not with family money or connections or privilege, but in the way that matters most. I was self-made. Every single thing I had, I'd earned. Every door that opened for me, I'd kicked down myself. I got promoted to hiring manager at a company I'd fought to get into 3 years earlier. They gave me an office with my name on the glass door. Scarlett Rivers, hiring manager. I stood outside that door the first day, staring at those words, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. I felt whole. Not healed, maybe. Not okay. But whole. Like all the broken pieces had finally assembled themselves into something recognizable again. I thought about calling them. My parents. I thought about sending a photo of my office, of my nameplate, of everything I'd become. I wanted them to know. I wanted them to see what their discarded daughter had built from nothing. But then I realized I didn't need them to know. Their validation didn't matter anymore. For 5 years, I'd been running towards something, and I thought it was success. But it wasn't. It was independence. It was proof to myself, not to them, that I deserved to exist. That I deserved space in this world. That I deserved a future. The same girl they threw away had built her own future from scratch. And it was more beautiful, more meaningful, more earned than anything they could have ever given me. Because it was mine. Completely, utterly mine. 5 years later, the same sister they chose over me walked into my office asking for a job. I'll never forget that moment. Never. I was reviewing applications halfway through my morning coffee when my assistant knocked. "Your next interview is here, ma'am."
Ma'am.
I'd earned that. I'd earned the respect in her voice, the deference, the acknowledgement that I held power in that room. I looked up, said, "Send them in," and went back to the resume in front of me. The door opened. Footsteps. Hesitant. Nervous. I could hear it in the pace, someone unsure, someone afraid. I didn't look up immediately. I finished reading the line I was on, because I'd learned that power lives in the details, in the control of moments. Then I raised my eyes. Emily. Time stopped. I mean it, everything just froze. The air conditioning humming in the background, the distant sound of phones ringing, my own heartbeat, it all disappeared. There was just her, standing in my doorway, holding a folder against her chest like a shield, wearing a suit that looked expensive but worn, like she'd been to too many interviews in it. Her hair was different, shorter. She looked tired, older, uncertain, and the look on her face when she saw me.
God.
It was recognition and horror and shame all mixed together. Her mouth opened.
Closed.
Opened again. Scarlett. She said my name like a question, like she wasn't sure I was real. I didn't know you worked here. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just looked at her. Really looked at her. The sister they'd chosen. The one who got the college fund I'd paid for myself. The one who got the safety net while I got the streets. The one who got to sleep in her childhood bedroom while I figured out which park bench was safest. She was here, in my office, asking me for a job. The irony was so thick I could taste it. It was metallic. Sharp. It was every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every moment I'd wondered if I'd survive, all crystallized into this single, perfect moment of reversal. The universe had just handed me everything I didn't know I wanted. Revenge. Vindication. Power over the person who'd benefited from my destruction. I could have said anything. I could have told her to leave. I could have screamed at her. I could have asked her where our parents were now, whether they were proud of how their perfect daughter turned out, whether she'd enjoyed the future they'd stolen from me to give to her. My hands were shaking under the desk. Rage was bubbling up in my throat like acid. 5 years of pain wanted to explode out of me. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because something else was happening too. As I looked at her, really looked at her, I saw something I didn't expect. I saw desperation. I saw the same fear I'd seen in my own eyes 5 years ago. I saw someone who was lost. I smiled.
Politely.
Professionally. "We're here to discuss your qualifications." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Please sit down." The air felt electric. Heavy. Inevitable. Like the universe had been building to this moment all along. I thought revenge would taste sweet. But as I watched her speak, trembling, broken, I realized something. I didn't want her to suffer. I just wanted peace. She sat down, and I could see her hands shaking as she opened her folder. She tried to compose herself, tried to slip into interview mode, but we both knew this wasn't a normal interview. The past was sitting between us like a third person at the table. I asked her the standard questions. Tell me about your experience. What are your strengths? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? That last one almost broke her. I watched her face crumple for just a second before she caught herself. I just want stability, she whispered. I want a chance to prove myself. A chance to prove herself. The words hung in the air. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Did she have any idea how ironic that was? Did she remember that night? Did she remember standing at the top of the stairs, watching our parents hand me that $20 bill? Did she say anything? Did she fight for me? Or did she just accept her good fortune and go back to her perfect life? I kept my face neutral. Professional. I'd learned to wear masks. We all do when we claw our way up from nothing. Tell me about your education, I said, even though I'd already read it on her resume.
I wanted to hear her say it.
I wanted to hear about the college they'd paid for, the degree they'd funded, all the opportunities they'd given her while I was working double shifts and studying by library lighting. She talked. Her voice got smaller with every word. She told me about her degree, her internships, her previous positions. But between the lines, I could hear the truth. Things hadn't gone the way they'd planned. The golden child had tarnished. Whatever future they'd sacrificed me for, it hadn't materialized. She'd graduated, sure, but then what? Jobs that didn't work out. Projects that failed. A resume with gaps that spoke louder than achievements. She was struggling, just like I had, except she'd had every advantage, and somehow she'd still ended up here, in my office, needing my approval, needing my mercy. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought this moment would fill all the empty spaces inside me that 5 years of survival had carved out. I thought seeing her brought low would somehow elevate me higher. But it didn't. As I watched her stumble through explanations, watched her confidence crack and crumble, watched shame paint her cheeks red, I felt something unexpected. I felt sorry for her. Not because she deserved it. Not because what happened to me was okay. But because I realized something sitting there. Emily was just as trapped as I had been. She'd been trapped by expectations, by the weight of being chosen, by the pressure of justifying our parents' choice. She'd been given everything and told to be perfect, and when she couldn't be, she'd crumbled. She'd never had to fight. She'd never had to build herself from nothing. And now, when life demanded resilience, she had none. I'd built armor out of pain. She'd been kept soft by comfort. And in the long run, I'd won. Not because I was sitting on the other side of this desk, but because I'd become someone I was proud of. Someone strong. Someone who didn't need anyone's validation to know her worth. Could she say the same? The interview wound down. She ran out of things to say. I closed her folder slowly, deliberately. The power in that moment was intoxicating. One word from me, and her life would change. Yes or no. Hired or rejected. I held her future in my hands the same way our parents had held mine. Thank you for your time, Emily, I said, my voice even, calm, completely professional. I stood up, walked around the desk, and extended my hand. We'll be in touch. She stood, shook my hand, and I felt her trembling. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something more, an apology, maybe, or an explanation, but nothing came out. I walked her to the door, opened it, and watched her leave. They said I didn't deserve a future, so I built one. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. I walked outside the building after that interview, and the sunlight hit my face. The same kind of sunlight that used to shine on me through my bedroom window when I was a kid, before everything fell apart. But it felt different now. Warmer. Earned. That light used to feel like a promise the world made to me. Then it felt like a lie.
And now?
Now, it just felt like mine. I didn't hire Emily.
I want to be clear about that.
Not out of cruelty, but out of honesty. Her qualifications didn't match what we needed. Her experience had gaps our position couldn't accommodate. And yes, maybe there was a part of me that knew I needed to close that chapter without tying myself to her. Without making her success or failure my responsibility. I'd spent 5 years learning that I wasn't responsible for other people's choices. I wasn't going to start now. But I didn't take pleasure in it either. I thought I would. I thought revenge would feel like vindication, like justice, like all those nights of suffering finally meaning something. But it didn't. It just felt empty. Because here's what I learned in that moment. Revenge doesn't heal you. It doesn't fill the holes that trauma carved out. It doesn't make the pain retroactively worth it. All it does is make you focus on the past instead of the future. And I'd spent 5 years fighting for a future. I wasn't about to waste it looking backward. Sometimes the best revenge isn't payback. It's peace. It's waking up in an apartment you pay for yourself. It's looking in the mirror and liking the person staring back. It's building a life so full and rich and meaningful that the people who rejected you become irrelevant. Not because you've forgiven them, forgiveness is complicated and I'm still working on that, but because they simply don't matter anymore. Their opinions, their choices, their validation, none of it has power over you anymore. I thought about my parents sometimes during those 5 years. I wondered if they thought about me, if they regretted it. If they ever drove past a homeless person and wondered if it could be me. But after that interview with Emily, I stopped wondering. Because I realized, it doesn't matter. Their regret or lack of regret doesn't change my story. It doesn't diminish what I built. It doesn't take away from the fact that I survived, that I thrived, that I became someone extraordinary not because of them, but in spite of them. If you've ever been told you weren't good enough, remember, you can't steal a destiny that was never yours to take. My parents thought they could decide my future. They thought they could determine my worth, cap my potential, write me out of the story. But destiny doesn't work that way. You can't give someone else's purpose away. You can make things harder, sure. You can throw obstacles in the path. But if someone is meant to rise, they will. Maybe not in the way you expected. Maybe not in the timeline you hoped for. But they will rise. I rose. From park benches to corner offices. From $20 to financial security. From broken to whole. Or at least whole enough. And the most beautiful part? I did it without them. Their absence wasn't a curse. It was a liberation. It forced me to become my own foundation, my own safety net, my own source of worth. Drop where you're watching from because somewhere out there, someone needs to know they're not alone in starting over. Someone needs to know that being thrown away isn't the end of your story. It's just the beginning of the one you write yourself. And trust me, that story is going to be so much better than anything they could have written for you.